Parents, today's podcast is one that I have been waiting to tell you about. I've said many times that parenting is one of the hardest and yet the most rewarding jobs that we will ever have. We want to do everything right, but inevitably we're going to mess up. We want to protect our kids, but not be a helicopter parent. And then we want them to grow up, but we also want to love them by doing things for them, like laundry, making their breakfast when they're capable of doing it for themselves. So I want you to prepare yourself for this episode because I promise you are going to learn so much. So my guest is a New York Times bestselling author. Her first book, How to Raise an Adult, was one that opened my eyes to so many things that I was doing wrong. And that book led to a TED Talk that's had more than 5 million views, and you're about to hear why. Julie Lythcott-Haims is passionate, she's smart, she's real, she is full of advice that we need to hear if we want to raise kids to function successfully in today's world. So here we go. Julie, I have for weeks now looked forward to this conversation. I am an avid reader of your, especially your first book, because it hit me right at the perfect time as a parent. But I know you have 3 books now, and I just really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Natalie, it's an honor to be with you, and I'm delighted to get to spend time with your community as well.
Well, let's dive right in. As a parent, I have 3 kids, one in college, one in high school, one just finishing elementary school. And your first book, which was 6 years ago, my community really shared. We transferred it around until I spilled coffee and had to buy a new book to send other people, which is good for you because we just keep buying the same book. But How to Raise an Adult. You've seen it at all levels as also the dean of freshmen at Stanford. Tell me your experience with that. And for people maybe who haven't read that book, should go out and buy it. I will say what you learned.
Yeah, absolutely. So that book is written from the vantage point of my being a dean at Stanford and being a mom in Silicon Valley. So, like you, I'm a parent. My own kids are now crazy for me to say. I just can't believe it, but they're 22 and almost 20. In fact, by the time this comes out, my little one will be 20. And so here I am raising kids in Silicon Valley, Palo Alto, trying to do the right thing. And I'm at this elite institution where my job is to advocate for and care about other people's grown up kids. And I began to see some things that were really concerning. Parents were behaving at the university level in ways they had been behaving K through 12, but now the kids in university could be in the military, could be in the workplace, and they're still acting like their kid can't do anything. So parents were wanting to register their student for class. They were wanting to argue with professors about grades. They were wanting to get involved in roommate disputes. And they were waking their kids up still. They were needing an orientation. If their kid was going abroad, the parent wanted a parent orientation for study abroad. And I felt this cognitive dissonance. Like they're so accomplished and so capable. Why are you doing every little thing for them? Why don't you trust your kid can? And I was really in this place of rooting for these young adults to be able to register themselves for class and solve their own routine problems and make choices and go off in directions that felt right to them without sort of being overly attended, like such an encroachment into their agency. And of course, we were seeing the rise in mental health challenges in the young adult population, and researchers were starting to put these two things together: overparented, underdeveloped, less well. And I began to really rail against this, and then discovered to my horror that I was replicating these very behaviors in my own home, that I was in fact swimming in this soup. And I could point to the problem in other people's lives, then began to realize when I discovered I was cutting my 10-year-old son's meat. Okay, that was my aha, you are part of the problem moment.
Yep.
I'm cutting a 10-year-old's meat. And for anybody listening, 10 is too old to be cutting your kid's meat. 10 is too old to be bathing your kid in the bathtub. Okay, kids have to learn to do things for themselves. They need increasing privacy over their bodies. They need increasing decision-making power. They need increasing problem-solving opportunities. Okay, so I'm seeing all of this and feeling really, once I got that I was part of the problem, I became very invested in understanding, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Is it harming our kids? Yes, it is. What are we going to do to stop? And that's why I wrote How to Raise an Adult.
Boy, you just said a lot that hits home as a mom. I like to think if my kids are capable of doing it, well, they better be doing it. And yet, as a mom, I find myself getting up and going, I'm going to make breakfast for you today because it makes me feel good. Makes me feel like I'm loving them if I'm doing the thing that they are capable of doing for themselves. But then I'll find my 11-year-old. So when you said 10-year-old and not cutting their meat, sitting at the table like watching something on the phone or something and going, Mom, are you going to get me breakfast? And I'll go, you are capable of putting the waffle in the toaster and making your Eggo, and I'll say that to him,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
then where's that line?
Right.
But I want to make sure they know I love them.
Of course, of course. So let's talk about balance, I think, instead of lines. So we know that creating a meal is a very loving thing. Food nourishes us. Eating is important for our health and wellness. Usually there's some good family time around it. These are good things we want to be offering. We also want to know our kids can learn to do the stuff for themselves. So it's both. Let me give you an example of the 4-step method we can use to teach any child any skill. So let's go to making a grilled cheese sandwich. I don't know if your family, okay. Grilled cheese.
Of course. Yeah.
Every kid has to learn every skill before they, at some point in life, and much of it before they leave our home. So making a sandwich, a hot sandwich on the stove. The 4-step method for teaching any kid any skill is first you do it for them, then you do it with them, then you watch them do it, and finally they can do it. So in the early years, you're making the grilled cheese sandwich and your little one is in the family room or in their booster chair or wherever. You're doing all the work. They're going to eat it. They have nothing to do with the work of it. They're not learning anything other than Mom always makes me food. Step 2 is you say, hey, honey, come help me. We're going to make lunch together. And you pull that wonderful stool that's appropriate for a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old up to the counter, strap them in. You say, okay, we're going to make grilled cheese. You're narrating how to do it. Here, I get the bread. I've got the cheese. Maybe we'll put some tomato in. Do you want tomato? Do we want you, like, you're teaching with your voice, right? You're letting them do the tasks they're able to do. Grilled cheese is not hard for little ones to put together, but you're going to be the one at the stove. You're going to say, the stove is hot. Watch how I turn it on. Watch how I step away. So you're teaching. That's step 2. Step 3 is you switch roles. You say, it's your turn to stand at the stove. Now I'm here just in case. And you're literally there just in case to make sure they don't set themselves or the house on fire. Step 4, they can make you a sandwich while you're in the living room, right? So that's, you want your 11-year-old to be now at stage 4. They can make that sandwich. Doesn't mean they always have to. Doesn't mean there won't be many times when you're like, hey, I am making the food today. But it is reasonable to expect that they will also know how, and because you have taught them and set the expectation that they can and must contribute.
And that they can do it for you, because there'll be times that you're busy and you need a sandwich
Right.
too.
And that's what I mean by contribute, right?
Yeah.
You're a member of this
Right.
household, and we
Right.
all participate in making this place run.
How did we get here of overparenting? I mean,
Yeah.
I know people probably ask you that all the time. How did we get here?
Yeah, as you know from the book, I lay it out in the introduction. Basically, in the 80s, in the mid 80s, there were a lot of changes afoot around safety, around kids' activities, around homework,
News. I
play.
come from the news business.
Right.
So
Okay. Yes. Yes.
the stories of things that maybe were overblown too.
Right. So stranger danger was born, right? Play dates were born. Kids could no longer play freely. Parents had to arrange it and hover over it and intervene. We began doing the self-esteem movement. Yay, you're amazing all the time. Participation trophies, which led to the expectation that they would get constant praise and feedback and everything great. And so we began hovering on the sidelines of their activities. We began hovering over their homework because we were told, kids have to do better on these standardized tests. Parents have to be more involved. We began bubble wrapping them instead of preparing them for the unsafe things in the world, teaching them how to be safe out there. We began sort of bubble wrapping them so nothing could happen. And, I'm really sort of shorthanding it because I know we don't have a lot of time, but basically a lot of changes were afoot in the mid 80s. And the first kids to be subjected to the first play date were the first college students to come to campuses with parents who couldn't go, because childhood was once the realm of children. They had a lot of freedom, they had independence, and it had become this hovered over phase of life where kids were like dogs on a leash, just parents constantly there. And that has just grown more and more true. Now we have 2 generations that have been raised this way, millennials and Gen Zs. And it appears to work, Natalie. I mean, I think that's the short answer. Why do we do it? It appears to work. We keep them safe. We prevent them from falling off the rock wall at the playground. We make sure their homework gets turned in so they don't get a 0, right? It looks like it works when we set a plan and make sure they stick to the plan, and we kind of
In
mow
the
the,
moment, right? Yeah.
but long term, they don't develop the skill to do it.
Mhm,
They don't
mhm,
have muscle memory about how to do things or
mhm,
about how to cope when things go slightly awry, because things don't go awry. Why? Because we're lovingly showing up
mhm,
to make
mhm,
sure their every need is attended to. And it comes from a loving place. But this over parenting undermines their development. And then they become these young adults who don't know who they are, don't know how to do basic things, don't feel safe in the world, don't
mhm.
have a sense of how to problem solve or navigate a bureaucracy, talk to people who are authority figures. We've just undermined their capabilities, and it harms them. And it harms us because it takes so much time to live someone else's life.
Oh my
We
goodness,
get
does
back
it
to
ever?
living our own
Yeah.
life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and your focus becomes about those lives. All of, I mean, I have been guilty of this, and I know people you interview probably don't want to say I'm guilty. I'm guilty. Totally guilty, but also much in part to you 6 years ago in reading this book, I'm aware.
Right.
So, yes, but I stop myself. I go, "Oh, yeah, my high schooler, did you get all that turned in?" I'll tell you another problem that I see is that I am often aware that they don't turn something in or their grades before they are because I'm
Well,
getting the email from the school.
yep.
And
That's
I've had to kind of turn that off and
it's
go,
toxic.
"It's
Natalie,
toxic."
toxic. Some software genius, I live in Silicon Valley. Some software genius, probably 5 miles from me, created these portals that allow parents to
Mhm.
see the grade
At all
book, right?
times. Mhm.
At all times. Nobody asked, is this developmentally healthy in the life of a child? What is this doing to the relationship between teacher and child? The teacher is supposed to give the child feedback. The
Mhm.
child is the one in school. When we basically intervene, or we're given this data and then we're like, what do I do? My kid is all of a sudden an
Mhm.
A- student. Should I get a tutor? Like, we get too much data every single day. We don't know what to do with it. We overreact. It's like our child has become a stock in which we've invested, and we're getting our stock market ticker.
Mm.
That
Oh,
grade portal is like, oh my gosh, oh,
yeah.
look how we're doing. Oh no, right? What? Your child is not a stock. What are you going to do? Sell it off if it underperforms? It's a human being who's trying to
Mm.
go through the school system, who has to learn about a
Mhm.
work ethic and to persist and set goals and rebound when things go badly. They're supposed to be learning all of that. It's not about what grade did they get today. But we're
Mhm.
so concerned, Natalie, in communities like yours and mine and that of your listeners, like, they won't get into X college if I don't do their homework for them today. And
Mm.
let me just call that out. We get so obsessed with their outcomes. Too many parents are outright doing their kids' homework at times. Maybe not all of it, maybe just a piece of it.
Mhm.
But that is how absurd it has become. And that undermines our kids' wellness, because you're basically saying, honey, you can't be a successful fourth grader, eighth grader, 11th grader.
Right.
I have to jump in and do your work.
Yeah.
We have to renorm this. It is a system out of control. So good for you for trying to ignore those emails from the school, because when schools are constantly pushing that information, they are complicit in the problem they decry, which is why are parents so obsessed about everything? Well, look, you're feeding
Right.
them data. What do you expect them to do with the data?
But the data is there. And I think that's what, as a parent, you go, well, it's there. So should I access it? So either from the school, or there's a whole nother topic, but I have an app where I can see where my kids are at all times. I like it. It makes me feel like I know they're safe. But then later in the day, if they come back to me and then I say, hey, I see that you went, and they're like, oh, you're tracking me because you don't trust me. I do trust them. So I've had to turn those off too.
Yep. Good for you. I mean, shout this from the rooftops, Natalie. Surveillance is not for children. It's creepy. Prior to these apps, the people who were surveilled 24/7 were incarcerated persons and
Yeah.
people in psychiatric facilities. And now, thanks to these technologies, we have brought this notion that it's free and I mean, not free, fair and important to surveil our children.
Yeah.
You say you think you can see that they're safe. You don't know that they're safe. A blue dot that shows you their
Doesn't
location
know they're safe. You're
doesn't
right.
mean
We
they're
don't know.
safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, what you want is trust between parent and child.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
want to say, you're old enough now to be out until. I presume, like, let me give you an example about curfews. I'm a curfew person. I've told you my kids are now 20 and 22. When my daughter was a freshman in high school, I think her weekend curfew was 10 p.m. And she said, Mom, none of my friends have curfews. This is unfair. And I was like, really? How do they do it? How do your friends' parents do it? She says, well, my friends just text their parents constantly through the night. Can I do this? Can I do this? And I was like, well, Avery, I don't want to spend my night responding to your text. Your dad and I have plans tonight. I want to set a curfew and I trust you're going to make good judgments about where you can go and what you can do. I expect you to be home. If you're not home, I'm assuming you're in a ditch or something has happened, at which point I activate my concern. But within that barrier, I've decided you're mature enough to have a curfew of 10 p.m. Okay. She got it. She realized that she was being given so much more freedom rather than the, can I do this? What about this? Who wants that life?
Nobody.
Right?
Absolutely.
We're trying to teach them to have good judgment. How are they going to ever practice having good judgment if they're never out of our sight?
Right. Right. Where they feel like they have to come to us for everything to, is this good judgment? Is this good judgment? Or cut you off completely because they're afraid of being judged.
Right. Or they're
which is a
sick and
whole nother
tired
issue.
of how much they're crying. Yeah.
Do you think that here you've talked about the second generation? Do you think the pendulum's swinging, or do you think it's swinging back, or do you think it's getting worse?
I see both. I see it swinging back in communities that have had mental health crises. There's a beautiful documentary out called Chasing Childhood, which I recommend to you and to your audience, set in the East Coast and largely in New York City, Long Island, Wilton, Connecticut. Families who have recognized that our kids are so overscheduled, overwatched, and steered down certain paths, all of the hallmarks of overparenting, all the different types. And they've seen the mental health effect on kids, and they've decided they have to rebuild a sense of a healthy childhood. And so there are communities that have gotten it, and they're like, okay, whatever we thought mattered doesn't matter anywhere near as much as our kids' wellness. And I see communities embracing that, wrap around embracing educators, mental health practitioners, physicians, clergy, coaches, mentors, kids, right? And there are people who are doubling down. I mean, I think the college admissions crisis was an example, or not crisis, but scandal was an example of some people will go to all lengths to manufacture an existence for their kids in furtherance of getting them in to some place the parents need the kid to get into, so the parents feel okay about themselves. And I think that's what we're really talking about.
Yeah.
We overparent largely out of ego. I need my kid to be at this school, to be doing this well, to be pursuing these interests, to be excelling in this to this extent. I need it so I can feel I'm a good parent. This is where the child becomes basically our dog that we have entered into the Westminster Dog Show so we can get best
show off.
food.
Part of that social media, right? Show off. Lots of, we all post pictures of our kids being successful. We're proud of them, but that certainly has fed into the problem is the show off social media culture.
Look, we're all a little insecure and unwell. That's normal and fine. The pandemic has made us even more unwell. That's normal. But let's be curious about what's going on for us. Let's be curious about why our adult life is not vibrant enough and interesting enough such that we have to turn our kids to our bonsai trees that we can clip and prune and show everybody, look what I've done. That's the metaphor I use in my TED Talk. Let's go get therapy, work on our own insecurities so we can get a life and our kids can have one too.
Okay, so perfect transition to the new book.
Okay.
Your turn, right?
Yes.
And knowing who you are, there it is. It's a beautiful book. I'm excited to read it. I've loved your writing. And I think it's a great transition. And you can tell me more about the book because we have to love ourselves. We have to know who we are. We have to always become a better person. And part of doing that is not relying on the happiness of our children to be happy.
Yeah, no one can give you happiness. You've got to find that space within yourself. They say that happiness is the distance between what you have and what you want. And so if there's a great distance, you are less happy. So the greater the distance, the less happy you are. You want what you have and what you want to be as close together. So a gratitude practice, being able to notice what you have that you're grateful for, very small things that you have that you can point to in your house, in your work, in your family life, in your relationships, and express gratitude. begins to help you appreciate the things you actually do have, and it compresses this distance from where you are to what you want. You realize that what you have is really quite good, and that then leads to, you know, much greater happiness. So yeah, we can't turn to our kids' performance, projects, outcomes as the source of our happiness. It puts tremendous pressure on
Mm.
them. They feel constantly worried, like, am I, you know, my mom needs me to be whatever. Man, what pressure.
Why did you write this book?
I wrote Your Turn because really for the same reason I wrote How to Raise an Adult. I was a college dean. I've now left Stanford 9 years ago. I wrote How to Raise an Adult because I was rooting for young adults to thrive, and there was a type of parenting in the way of them thriving. So I'm not a parenting expert, compassionate person who cares about each one of us making our way in this life journey unimpeded by other people. Well, helicopter parenting impedes kids. That's why I
Yeah.
wrote that book. This book is framed for young adults, for the generation millennials who have said, I don't want to adult. Adulting is scary. You know, I don't know how. It's me with compassion saying, I get that. I hear that. I'm here for you. You know, let's talk it through. Let me give you some guidance based on the 53 years worth of mistakes and triumphs I've had. I also bring in stories from other people from myriad walks of life because I want every reader to feel that I envisioned their existence when I wrote this book. So it's me rooting for young adults. That's why I wrote it.
Is this the book that is the kids that were overparented who are now in that next stage of life trying to figure out, or is this people like me who are still trying to figure out life?
Well, there are two ways to answer that question. The first is I've written it for all young adults, regardless of how they were parented. But there are moments in the book when I
Mm.
say, if you were raised, and I describe some behaviors that we would label as overparenting, if your parents did this, this may be hard for you. So you're going to need to lean into that. And so I acknowledge that that's the reality for some readers, but I don't presume all. And older readers, so I've pitched it at 18 to 34, but older readers in their 40s, 50s, 60s, even older have said, you wrote this for me. I feel seen in
Mm.
the book. And I think that makes sense because it's simply adulthood is just the stage of life we're all in if we survive childhood and then we die, right? So you're more or less responsible for yourself. That's what it means to be an adult. Whereas in childhood, you're more or less the responsibility of someone else, assuming your parents have the basic capacity to look after you. So it's on you. It's your choices, it's your goals, it's your situation you got to deal with. Doesn't mean you have to go it alone, but you're more or less responsible. And older people are saying they feel seen. They're seeing their own regrets in the book. They're feeling permission to go claim the life they want. I mean,
Mm.
this book is shouting at the reader, not in a bad way, but like, this is your life. It
Mm.
is yours. You are not a dog on a leash. This is not for someone else to decide. It's you. And yes, that's terrifying, but it should also feel delicious.
Mm.
You get to decide, and that is the best thing. So I'm rooting. When I say I'm rooting, like the voice in this book is me, like, yeah, you know, there's energy and velocity to this voice in this book, trying to help people claim their agency and claim what they want. I do believe life is precious and it is wild. I'm quoting the poet Mary Oliver here. What do you want to do with this one wild and precious life? I do very much live by that, with that question firmly in mind. And certainly as I wrote this book, I had it in mind for my readers.
I love your passion so much. And I don't know if you know my story. I know your story, but I left 28 years in the news business to claim my life. Like I was living somebody else's dream and it was negative often in the
Mm,
news industry.
mm,
And, you know, the stories that do make a difference
yeah,
in my experience are those that change lives. It's be better at yourself, claim your health, spend
yeah,
time with your family, stories about education, stories about mindset and positive mindset instead of just the lead stories because they're happening that day that are fires and crimes. And that doesn't change our lives. We get to be
right.
aware of them, but they don't change our lives.
Good for you, Natalie. I'm happy for you that you made that pivot. And I bet a lot of people were like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? You're so successful, right?
Yeah.
I left corporate law because it wasn't feeding my soul. And I had a lot of people say, you're crazy. What are you doing? It's a great salary. You're
Yeah.
well regarded.
Yep.
It's secure. And I thought, yeah, security matters, but
Mm-hmm.
I want to live a life where I'm just secure. Secure feels sort of strapped in, like I'm on a, you know, an airplane. Like I'd like to roam free, frankly. And I need to figure out how I can work in a way that where I do what I'm good at. And I also love it. I want to feel that I'm nourished by my work, even as I also need to do it because it pays my bills. I want both. And I think both, being good at it and loving it, is available to almost all of us. I mean, outside circumstances of real lack financially and real struggle, where you are just worried about making ends meet, I think we have more choice than we realize about the work that we do, who we choose to be in relationship with, where we choose to live. And so I'm very much a believer in the individual's ability to harness ourselves, take us, rip ourselves from what society expects and
Mm.
what we've always been told, and kind of harness that internal sense of, here's who I am, here's what I want. And I'm here to say that's valid. And I'm so glad you made that choice in your own life, Natalie.
Well, thank you. And I hope to encourage other people to do that. Like at any stage of your life. I love what you just said. I'm writing that down. Of, is what you're doing nourishing, and are you feeding your soul? Are you, I relate to what you did when you left corporate law. Like it was secure, it was glamorous. I had a great gig and people went, "What? You're leaving?" I said, "I just don't feel like this is where I'm supposed to be."
Yeah.
So I encourage people to do that, which leads me to these two questions I like
Yes.
to ask people
Yes.
here at the end of the podcast. I love learning from successful people,
Okay.
and I think there is a lot we can learn from your process and what you do and how you think. So the first question is your favorite productivity tool. I'm all about mindset, and I think productivity is often mindset. So give us your favorite productivity tool.
So a couple things are coming to mind. I'm gonna pick one. I use the Google Calendar, and I have my to-do list as a calendar. And so I keep my to-do list as an ongoing repeating calendar every day. And so I can go into today and I have little to do, big to do. So I can look at little to do, take care of a few tasks, hit save, and it'll say save for just now or save for the future. And I'm like, save for the future. That means the to-do list is automatically updated. I can access it on a plane. I can access it as long as I have cell coverage or Wi-Fi, I can see my to-do list. And so it's a way for me to be very productive in small moments. So it's like, I've got 15 minutes, I got 5 minutes, I got an hour. What do I need to take care of? And
I
it's
love
always,
that.
yeah,
And I like you have a little to do, big to do,
yeah,
because
yeah, big,
sometimes my to do is like a
yeah,
long to do, and some of them take an hour and some take 5 minutes.
yeah. And I'm often asked to read other people's books and blurb them, and that could be a 20-hour task depending on the length of the book. So those going big to do. I have to then schedule out time to make sure it gets done.
I love that. Okay. So second question is the biggie. I know it's like a whole book. But if you can boil it down, your purpose, when did you discover? Because I'm rediscovering, and I think a lot of people, it's okay to rediscover your purpose, and what is it?
I'm going to frame it a little differently because I think I have been coming back around to a purpose I always knew.
Hmm.
Okay. So I kind of went away from my purpose and then I came back to it. And so I will go back to, when did I know? I knew when I was 7 that I was here to help people. I couldn't have told you when I was 7 what the work was going to be. Was I going to be a lawyer who helped people? Was I going to be a fireman who helped people? Was I going to be a nurse? Was I going to be a writer? I didn't know what it was going to be. I wanted to be a broadcast journalist when I was growing up because I saw it as a way to help people understand what was
Mhm.
going on. But then I got a D in communication. So I thought, well, shoot, I guess I can't communicate. Ironies. But at 7, my older siblings were joking about, I have these half siblings who are a lot older than me. And they were joking about the nicknames they had for each other. They were in their 20s. I was 7. And they were like telling silly nicknames. And one of them turned to me and said, Julie, what's your nickname? And I said, Bridge Over Troubled Waters. And they were like, whoa, heavy. Come here, little sister. Right. And the song was popular. It was the 70s, Simon Garfunkel. My parents played it on their 8 tracks, but I knew that it was more than a song. I related to the concept. I felt that I could be a bridge over troubled waters, the trouble a human is having with their life. I felt like I could be
Yeah.
that bridge. And I have been a person humans listen to, speak with, trust, seek advice and counsel from. I have played that role in the life of humans since I was little. I don't know why that is. I don't know why. I don't, it is inherently who I am. And I think that is my purpose. I try to listen. I try to hold up a mirror so that people can just see who they are. In conversation with me, they tend to learn more about themselves,
Mm-hmm.
not because it's my opinion about them, but because I'm asking questions or observe, just in dialogue in a way that helps them better understand what they want. And I think that is the bridge role that I play. And I feel honored and humble in that role. And I think ultimately that is the bridge that I am trying to be. I am trying to bridge over the troubles that people have, their unawareness of their self, their own self. I'm trying to sort of bring them back to themselves.
Oh, one thing that struck me on your website, by the way, I feel like you're speaking right to me in everything that you say. Your purpose is so clear. But on your website, you say that you're in a journey from fear into love.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we all,
And we all
right?
are. We
Yeah.
all are. And it's normal to fear.
Yeah. That's right. Absolutely.
And a little bit of fear pushes us into that next stage. Thank you so much for the conversation today, for all that you do. And I think your 7-year-old self is being lived out very well in helping people.
I appreciate that. That means a lot to me, Natalie. Thank you.
Where can people find you? I know your books, they're all on your website, but give me a little bit more.
Yeah. So my website is julielythcott-haims.com. It's my last name, my full name without the hyphen.com. You can learn about me and what I'm about and my work there. I'm also pretty active on social. I'm J Lythcott-Haims, my first initial last name, no hyphen everywhere. Not yet TikTok, but coming soon, I think. We shall
Are you
see.
going to do it?
I am for my middle book, my memoir on race, on being Black and biracial in white spaces. I'm really interested in helping younger people discover that memoir because I think they'll feel less alone and more seen if they're traveling a similar path in life. So find me on social. I love to interact with people. I love to engage. I'm actually about to launch an 800 number where you can just call and tell me like what's going on for you anonymously, and then
Awesome.
aggregate that and share what people have said and kind of a weekly call. So I'm starting to pull that together. I'm just super interested in humans and what we're going through and how I can help. So
I love it. And if you do TikTok, you don't have to dance. I
that's
have
right.
TikTok. It's educational. We're all learning, going from fear to love. And I look forward to following you there and everywhere else, as I already do on Instagram. So
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you so much. I appreciate you and everyone who chose to listen to us today. I'm grateful for you.
thank you. Take care.
Bye.